Welcome, low ego action heroes. This is Debbie Levitt from DeltaCX.com. We're a full service CX and UX consultancy. We do projects, training, and consulting. Check us out. Still didn't update my website, but check us out anyway. And welcome to August 16th, 2022, our late office hours Ask Us Anything. We'll have Dr. Nick Fine joining us in a moment, but I have a couple of things I want to knock out of the way before we bring him on. I don't want to bore him too much with this stuff. So first of all, thanks as always to the people who are donating to the channel. Thanks to everybody who has clicked join on the YouTube channel and is donating $3 to $10 American dollars per month, which keeps me in chocolate chips, which I've certainly eaten too many of this month, as well as streaming software. So totally optional, but always appreciated. So thanks to everybody who's part of that. Remember to please subscribe here on the YouTube channel. And I also want to remind everybody that we've got both a Slack community and now a growing Discord community. The Discord community is a little more up and coming, a little quieter, but we would love to see you there and help us bring it to life. You can find those links at deltacx.com/links. These communities are completely free. Unlike some other UXers out there, you are not charged to be in our community. So please do join. And I also want to give a couple of quick plugs. Hello, Hung. Yes, Nick will be here shortly. A couple of plugs to some upcoming events that we have. The Concentric Conference can be found at deltacx.com/concentric, CONCENTRIC. We've got lots of amazing live workshops that week, and we also have some very nicely discounted prices so that we can get more people involved. And of course, I've got a few of my Transforming Toward Customer Centricity workshops coming up, including lots of seats at the $27 American dollars price. So come check that out at deltacx.link/ttcc-training. And then one more word before we bring Nick in. Sorry, Nick, I've been gone for 2 weeks, so I have a lot of business to cover. And a lot of people, or I should say, some people have been asking me about my time away. I was gone for the last 10 days working on my book. People are curious how that's going. And I would say the book is going well, but it is not ready. So for those of you who thought I was going to publish it yesterday, I am not. The book needs a lot more time in the oven, and then it's going to go to the editors. So I'm hoping for September or October release, and then I'll certainly try to get it out by the end of the year, and then I will go on a super marketing campaign probably early in the year. Won't make sense to try to heavily market the book right around the holidays. All right, so that is the update, though. Here in Office Hours Ask Us Anything, you can ask about my book or my trip if you would like. And with that, I will bring in Dr. Nick. And Dr. Nick, for those who might not know who you are, who the heck are you?
You guys know who I am. I'm Dr. Nick. I'm a 20-year digital native, 12-year UX pro, old school UXer, research and design and strategy these days. Yeah, I'm a full-time practitioner. I'm a contractor. I've been contracting for 8 years. And I think that's it. Yeah.
Okay.
Hello.
Well, and find him on LinkedIn, everybody. I think that's your main world. LinkedIn, yes, maybe. All right, so for those of you who are new here, you get to ask us questions, and you can ask them at deltacx.com/ask. I think that's the URL I've been using, but I've been gone for 10 days and I forgot. Try that, deltacx.link/ask. If you're not sure, go to the deltacx.com/links, and there's a link from there. Now, we did get a bunch of questions ahead of time because my system takes your questions while I'm sleeping, and I do save them. So I think we have 5 or 6 questions. Those will come first. Any questions that are asked now, either anonymously or live in the chat, will be added to the list, which means sometimes you've got to wait a little while for me to answer your questions because of how long it takes. So, all right, let's start with our first question. Dr. Nick, it looks like this. Hey, Debbie, any thoughts on working in a team with another designer? I feel like I don't ever have full ownership of designs or research, even though I enjoy working with the other designer. Nick, pros and cons of collaboration, perhaps?
Yeah, or culture maybe, you know, like I don't know anything about the company that you're working at. If it's a kind of a more of a company type thing rather than an agency, that's going to change a lot, because in an agency there's lots of designers, and so it's working together is much more of a kind of a known, or there's a way of doing that. I'm going to make an assumption you're in a kind of a company, and there's a couple of designers, and you're working with another one of them. The way I look at these things is you don't really have ownership anyway. You're more of a custodian of that particular design. If you're working on, let's just say, something on like the company intranet or company webpage, unless you're creating this page from scratch, you're just adding features to it, updating it, iterating it. You're a custodian. You see what I mean? You're just, so yes, they're your designs, but they're in the bigger picture, if you know what I mean. So also, there's also timescales to this. Like, yes, you own it kind of through testing, and then once it's tested, then you kind of let go of it and it's into dev or wherever else it's going. Good question. I wouldn't want to get too hung up on it, if you know what I mean. I don't know how. Yeah, Debbie's nodding. I don't know how you feel, Debbie, about this.
Yeah, I felt similarly. And Linda, thanks for the question. We'll put it on the list. There's about 6 questions ahead of you, so please know we will get to it. I felt similarly. I feel like if you are working with another designer, that's great. I think pairing up designers is a really great way to accelerate speed, have more ideas and hearts and minds and eyes on the problems and the solutions. So I'm all for pairing up designers where we can. And I think the question is, why do you feel like you need ownership? Can't it be shared ownership with your teammate designer? This will still look good in your portfolio. These will still be good things that you can speak to in job interviews if you choose to leave this job. I'm not telling you should, but I'm just future-proofing your portfolio there. If you're enjoying working with this person, you get along with them well, you've got a good thing going, you're lucky. You're super lucky. Listen to all the other questions we get. You're super lucky. And it sounds like you might be in a good environment. And why do you need ownership? And can't that be shared ownership? Or, I mean, are you saying the other person doesn't let you ever decide anything? Okay, that's not good. But I think if you can both find some even things there, why do you need ownership? Is that what you were thinking, Dr. Nick?
Yeah, I mean, you're always going to be collaborating or kind of negotiating everywhere you are in your working life, you know? This is just another example of playing nicely with others, if you know what I mean. That's really it. I can't think of many times, unless I'm working for a private client, where I have the luxury of kind of doing my thing. In fact, I'm on the job, on a professional, on my Monday to Friday work, very, very rarely. I mean, usually you're following a direction of travel or fitting into a culture or a process. The stuff that I'm changing currently has taken 18 months to change. But that's a whole nother thing.
That's so agile.
Don't go there just yet. You'll trigger me.
Sorry. All right.
Yeah,
so let's.
The bottom line there is don't get hung up on ownership.
Cool. All right. So hey, what are you drinking?
This is lovely. I needed a beer today. It was a heavy day. This is a peach Melba sour.
Peach Melba sour. Okay.
Yeah, my kind of drink.
Not sponsored. Hold on. Not sponsored.
Sponsored.
Kids, if you're under 18 or under 21. Thank you, Dr. Nick, for the endorsement. Okay, let me jump to the next question because we're getting them faster than we can answer them. And this one came in anonymously earlier, and it said, tips to improve speaking up in meetings and asking better questions. I've tried note-taking and getting out of my own head. I'm naturally introverted, but I'm trying to ask more questions.
That is a great question, and really well done for asking it. That's not just a brave question, but that's a really heartfelt or honest, straight up question. And I really respect you for asking that. The quick answer on this one, because there's lots of very long answers on this, is you can always tell people who want to hear the sound of their own voice, or they just want to make noise. Do you know what I mean? That's always a thing. In England, we call them Shirleys, like because somebody at the back of the auditorium goes, but surely, you know. It's classic. Number one is don't be that person. Don't feel this need to talk, right? I think of it like a burning desire, because I'm somebody who really has to fight minute by minute with not saying stuff, right? And believe it or not, I'm an introvert who acts like an extrovert through neurosis,
Same here.
basically. Right? That's how that works, right? Neurosis will make you do lots of crazy shit.
It's
You're
not same
naturally
here.
inverted, and you're naturally introverted, and that's great. And you want to be more kind of extrovert or feel more like you can get out of yourself to do that. I think of it like a burning desire. Like some of these things that are going to trigger you, or do you know what I mean? Make you think so, and make a note of it on your pad. Look at that list as the conversation is going on. Some of them will be like code reds. Do you know what I mean? Like high priority, DEFCON 1. This is a major deal. I've got to get it out, right? Those are the ones, just fuck it. You just interrupt, do what you need to do, get your point across. Sometimes you've got to shout across more senior people. It can get really messy, but you know, have the courage of your convictions. If it really is a DEFCON 1, it's a code red, and you've got to make this point because something bad is happening in the world, then so be it, you know? It's about picking your fights, in my humble opinion. And I don't know if it's the digital world or just the world today in 2022, getting airspace in a Zoom meeting, in an online meeting, you haven't got the non-verbals and the other things that moderate conversation, or we've got all new ones that we haven't quite worked out. And it can be really difficult. So you put your hand up in Google Meet, or you wave on the screen, or you do whatever people do. It's really hard for introverts like you who aren't naturally good at telling people to STFU or just jump into the call. Hi, Janice. So pick your fights, do it once or twice, feel the fear and do it anyway. And after the first couple of times, you'll be like, that wasn't so bad. Also, look out for other people's interrupting strategies, right? They're really subtle. It's like we're looking for poker tells. They will clear their throat, turn their head sideways, press with their glasses, or do something audible to let the rest of the room know that they're going to want to talk. Lots of people do this, and you'll have it all going off. And it'll help you do either pick one of those that will work for you so that you can then kind of get involved in this melee of airtime grab. And that's kind of it.
Yeah, that's a great one. And I'm going to take a different angle at this, not to disagree, but just to say, pick your questions. You know, I wouldn't ask more questions just to ask more questions. We want to make sure that these are good questions and that these are helpful for whatever your job is. So if you have something you are unsure about, something that's unclear, something that you're concerned about, something that you didn't understand, something that was discussed in a previous meeting that you weren't in, you know, make sure you're asking a question that helps to inform you. I would say just be careful. Don't ask questions just to ask questions, because sometimes people get nervous and they end up asking questions that can accidentally make them look a little strange. And like, you know, oh yeah, can you tell me more about that? Like, what are you talking about? I've been talking about that for 10 minutes, you know, aren't you listening? So, you know, you want to be careful to ask. I know this sounds kind of silly, but you want to be careful to ask quality questions that don't come out as, you know, time filler. Hi, Kelby, Udipta, Shri, everybody's here. I'm happy to see everybody. So yeah, that's something there. And Faye says, great to have you back, Debbie. Happy to see you, Nick. I might not be able to see my answer live. Okay, Faye, if you can't make it, because it is a long list, do check out the video later. Solomon says, if your arguments are solid and you have evidence to back them, it's cause for a negative experience at a critical touch point. Speak up. Elliot says, aloha, which means maybe he's in Hawaii, because usually he's in, I think, British Columbia. Solomon says, oh, I'm 10 seconds behind. Oh, he's watching when he types and when it comes up on the screen.
Solomon, we can talk about this another time, but I wish what you said was true in the practical world. Oh, sometimes it can be in certain contexts, but just having good evidence, unfortunately, just isn't enough. And that's kind of half of the fight these days. Is like, look, this. It's showing that people want it red. They're going, nah, we're building it blue. You know, that's the fight. That's the fight.
Yeah, so I think, you know, I'm not too sure about how to ask better questions. I don't know if Michelle Ronson has some ideas on this and you want to try to track her down. But it's a hard question for me to answer because I've never faced that problem. So I just don't have great advice in this case. But you can think about some of the things Nick said, and I will bring up the next question. And drop the font since this one's a little bit longer. Okay, this one says, hello, Debbie and Dr. Nick. Usability testing with no budget. What's your advice? What I do presently is I search on Facebook groups and Reddits for groups of people that fit my audience and send them a message to be part of what I'm building so I can get their feedback. I do sometimes get 1 or 2 to book a call, but most times it's not even up to 5. I can't build on 2 or 3 people's data because it could be biased. Yes, Nick. Recruiting.
Yeah, this is recruitment. Yeah, I just kind of twigged that towards the end of that. This isn't really usability testing, no budget. It's how do I get hold of people and not incentivize them? Like, how do I not pay to acquire people and not have to pay them when I've got them? It's kind of a good question. Okay, here's what I did during my PhD, which was kind of, let's say, 06, 07 were the years that I was doing the research. Facebook was brand new and wasn't really a thing. Yeah, archaic. Wasn't really a thing. So I had to do the old school recruitment way. And I was a PhD student living on a bursary of £11,000 a year, which is inhumane. So no money for anything. I made postcards and did the physical thing, put stuff around. In a more digital world, without any budget, you have to think about how you motivate these people. Okay, this came up in LinkedIn actually the other day. How you invite people to do something for you, basically, is a skill, and you need to craft your invitation or your invite strategy accordingly. It isn't just spray and pray. And if you are going to spray and pray, you damn well better have a well pilot tested piece of copy on the invite, because people are getting spammed with this stuff all day and all night. Do my survey. Tell me what you think. We really care. All that bullshit.
Which one's
people
better?
are so fatigued by it. So fatigued. I mean, I know Debbie would say yes, because I do too. I get these things in and you're just like, oh, another. It's just, I'm not going to spend 40 minutes doing your freaking survey. I'm sorry, you're not paying me. 40 minutes is a long time. That's a lot of effort. I don't care that much about your brand to do that. Sorry, pal. So in order to counter that, you need to write something that really appeals to them, that triggers them in a positive way, that gets them to want to help you. Now, the whole content is king and communities of practice was a thing about 5 years ago, I guess. Your business, your company, if you're working behind a brand, ought to be somehow developing a community of users of practice. And those are the people to go and grab users from, okay? Like the geeks and the keynotes and the pseudo internals. What?
So Oz is here. Hey, did everybody see Oz on ESPN or what? Oz says, please don't try to incentivize with a chance to win something. The cynic in me sees that as a way to steal from me in exchange for a nearly zero chance to win something. Yeah, do not put people in a raffle or a contest and maybe they get an incentive or a prize to be part of a survey or a study.
I haven't incentivized anyone in over 10 years. The last incentives I paid was in a lab in Clerkenwell in 2010, 2011, paying them for their travel and some money for their time, like 40 quid plus expenses. What Oz says is classic. Most people, well, number one, most people are cynical, like he says, because, you don't or I don't give a shit for book vouchers or Amazon or whatever it is you're offering me. The bias, the influence that incentive has on validity is well known. Okay, so people are going to be saying things because they're getting paid, not because they care and want to tell you good stuff. So be very, very aware of the effect of incentivization. Does that help you get hold of people? No. Try to use your company brand if possible to run an event, do some stuff online. Try to attract those people who care about your product or your service so much that they would attend this thing and maybe tell you more about it. Maybe offer a closed user group or early access to new features and give these people privileged access. Again, it's going to be a biased sample because you've got the keynotes and not the noobs and you've got a bunch of veterans there. But still, it's a start. Okay, Debbie.
Yeah, what I would add to that is I'm a little bit more in the incentive bucket. So again, you just have two different perspectives here. You can try both, one, whatever makes sense for what you're doing, because we didn't learn if you're in government or corporate or agency. We didn't learn if you have been trying incentives or not. So we're definitely lacking some information. I do have a follow-up question from a totally different person that says something similar. So we're going to put that up next. It was also about recruiting. So I do think that incentives can be important. Yes, it can certainly bring you some scammers who are just answering questions hoping to get the money at the end. But Michelle Ronson's going to come on the show on September 28th and talk about how do we try to filter them out from our screener surveys, and how do we try to make sure that they don't end up in our populations and our interviews. I've had some people that I coach recently tell me that they've ended up interviewing some of these people and they can tell that they know nothing about the topic and they probably lied on the screener survey. How do we end that and not pay them? So yes, certainly once the incentive is out there, you might get more people, but you also might get scammers. So you're going to need a good way to have the gate. By the way, for those of you, we do have a Discord server now. If you prefer Discord over Slack, you just go to deltacx.com/links. We've got Slack and Discord now. And since we've got Discord running a bunch of bots to help us out, I named one of the bots Gatekeeper. And people have been enjoying and amused by the choice of bot name. So come let the Gatekeeper put you in your place. So let me put up the totally, I think from a different person, unrelated question that happens to be really similar, and we'll just kind of group these two together. Hey, Jamie, good to see you. And Oz, so happy that you're here. This person says, I'm working on a research plan, and somewhere in my head tells me finding people is hard. Recruiting has been a struggle for me, either for interviews, usability testing, or contextual inquiry. What advice would you give? I've added an incentive. I'm not getting the results I need. I think it was episode 105 where we did creating your own pool. That might be a good one to check out. Nick, anything you want to add, or do you feel like your last answer covered this as well?
No, the one thing I would add is my perennial beef or war against depth interviews, or inappropriate depth interviews. That's probably more appropriate, because inappropriate depth interviews are people are going to them as a default UX or user research methodology when there are other ways of finding out stuff in a better, more reliable way. Interviews is self-reporting. Remember that. What people say and what they do are usually different things. It's always a good data point. It's really great to cross-reference. I'm not knocking them at all. And there are lots of discovery and factually based stuff where you absolutely have to interview somebody. So let me just caveat with that. But there's a lot of very lazy or naive user research going on there, which is 45 minutes of depth interview kind of on a fishing trip, and that has to stop. It's a major problem, because 80%, 90% of the industry is user researchers on fishing trips, boiling the ocean and whatever else you want to know, and their employers, the gigs they're on, don't even know any different, and it's going to turn really badly. And I'll tell you why. Anyone who's been around for over 10 years knows that user research usually got cut from projects first back in the day, because it was seen as a waste of time and money, and it caused UX no end of trouble. And us as user researchers and as UX consultants at the time got hammered, and we had to fight to get user research put back in, because people didn't understand the value, because it was being used as a cash cow. It's happening again right now, because people are producing a whole bunch of really rubbish, not valid insight by doing depth interviews. The net result of this is the world is completely fatigued and conditioned by the fact that user researchers are doing 45-minute interviews. And if you want to come to me and talk to me for 45 minutes and not pay me, that's a tough, good luck with that. So that's kind of where I'm at. So what I'm trying to say here is, my point is don't do depth interviews, do short stuff. If you're going to book interviews with people, do 20 minutes, do half an hour maximum. Get what you need and get out. Do not get in there and just start looking around for stuff and going fishing, because that's the default behavior that all user researchers are doing today. And it's ruining the audience, it's ruining our practice. So you'll have an easier time recruiting if you make a less effortful demand.
Yeah, and I'm definitely more of a contextual inquiry person. I like to have people do tasks and watch them do stuff. And so I am Rarely, if ever, just doing a 30-minute or 60-minute interview. I feel like the last time I did that was 2013. I'm usually watching people do things, and I think that's where the magic happens. All right, I'm going to throw the next question up there because we're getting them faster than we can handle. And this person said, I'm a junior and I'd confess I don't know what I'm doing. There's so much information. Yes, thank you for that honest moment there. As a junior, finding a path to learn and practice is quite hard. What advice would you give? I know we get a variation of this pretty much every time we do this show, but Nick, advice for the junior.
Yeah. This has been on my mind because anyone who comes to the industry, where do you learn stuff? Basic question. Because for me, as an ex-academic type, in the old world, we had qualifications and certifications, which were quality assurance standards, which meant that I could rely upon a person to know a certain stuff, how to do things. Because that's becoming very much old world, and we're kind of open sourcing the world, and qualifications and degrees are kind of frowned upon, or they're not looked at in the same way that they were. People are coming to market without a basic training, and this person that's asking the question is really feeling that. What advice would I give? Conferences are a really good place to learn stuff, but they're also a real nightmare because there are a lot of very bad conferences out there where you'll sit there for a whole day or two watching people just showboating and parading and peacocking case studies of their company that you can't or won't be able to do. And that's no good. But there's some great conferences out there. Both Debbie and I have spoken regularly at Tech Circus, and they're good guys, good people, good stuff. I would check out. I love the Behavior and Design Conference, but that's me. The advice. Oh, and of course, Concentric. Of course, apologies. Another great conference coming up in, I believe, October.
Yes.
What advice would I give? The number one piece of advice I would give is be careful, check the provenance, the source validity of anything and anyone you read or work with. Basically, distrust everything and check everything. Because as a junior, you don't know anything, or you're not sure of what you know and what's not. And there's too many people out there who say they know UX, who say they've been doing it for 20 years, who are lying to get your money or your like or your follow. And they're complete charlatans, and most of them are like that. And you'll end up as a UX UI person doing absolute shit, drawing pictures. Be careful what you learn. Just look at the provenance. Otherwise, you might be eating garbage out of a dustbin.
Yeah, and while I agree with with Nick's advice in general, I also know that the juniors have a hard time of discerning what's good learning and good and bad, and so it's easy to say be careful, but like they don't even know what they're looking for. And so I agree with Nick that you have to kind of look up the author, speaker, trainer, YouTuber, Instagrammer, whatever it is, and take a real close look at their LinkedIn and what their experience is, and if it seems to be many years, if it seems to be specialized, and if they really know their stuff, or if this is just pseudo influencer stuff. I think also my advice to juniors is to pick a specialty first. If you try to be a jack of all unicorns out the door, it's going to be really hard. It's hard enough to become a great researcher, a great writer, a great designer, architect, but if you try to become a great all of those, it's a really tough, long uphill battle to become great at multiple things. So I would say pick one first, specialize first. If you don't love it, drop it, go to something else, but specialized first, because if you're looking for a job that is just a designer without research or just a researcher without design, you've got to be able to do that at a good enough level for the job to say, yep, that's our junior. So those are some of my key advice bits there.
Do you know, I had one thing.
Yeah.
Find a great senior by any means necessary. Ideally at your company, but if not, find the senior that you want to work with at another company, because that's how you're really going to learn. It doesn't matter what anybody tells you. The facts of the matter is, in your day-to-day working life, if you're working with a great senior, you're going to pick up all kinds of great stuff. You're going to learn good stuff, and you're going to get better as a junior, and you'll become a midweight within a couple of years quickly, and a decent, confident midweight.
Mentoring and coaching.
Instead of one of these people that jump straight to senior after 2 years, and you're blagging like hell. It's crazy.
Yeah. I think this makes a good follow-up question, which is from Hung, which is, hey, Dr. Nick, this is a Game of Thrones George R.R. Martin-esque question. How's the UX Bootcamp course replacement coming along? What can we do to help? Find your nearest Debbie. Thank you, Solomon.
Cheers
Drink.
to you. That's a great question because of the George R.R. Martin reference. It's like it's never going to get written. Here's what I'm going to tell you the absolute truth, okay? Because I'm ADHD boy, so I'm like really shit at completing absolutely anything and try to do 35 things at once, like my hair's on fire, which I don't have any. I keep flip-flopping between what the heck am I doing next, which is either writing a book, and I sit down and I write a chapter and edit and I go away and this is all good. And then I go, yeah, but actually, if this was a training program, this would be so much better. But then I go, well, then do the book and then make a training program from it. Probably all the stuff Debbie knows about, but the internal chaos in my head is unfunny. It's messy. It's when I say depressing, it's not depressing, but it's bringing me down because I want to just get some traction. I don't care what it is. I just want to just put the power down and do something and do it well. When I'm kind of just flamming between two of them, really. That's where I'm at. That's the truth, man. I've got too much content in my head and not enough focus to get it down in any one meaningful form. That's my problem. If anybody wants to work with me on it,
let me know if I can help you, Nick.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, Afzal, I see your question. We're going to add it to the end of the list. Hi, Kate. Hung says, Dr. Nick finds Winds of Winter. Please training program. So yeah, maybe Nick join our Slack or our Discord, get a bunch of the low ego action heroes together, and we'll build it as a village. All right, this next question says, hey, Debbie and Dr. Nick, done with my first research, which I interviewed 8 people, made some beginner errors, still learning. I didn't record the sessions. I missed a lot of data because I can't remember them all. Now I'm confused. What's the next step after interviewing people? How do I make sense of the data? Dr. Nick, I'm feeling a bunch of newbie mistakes here. Well, what do you... And of course, it's good to make newbie mistakes while you're a newbie. When else would you make them? Nick, what do you think?
I wasn't actually listening, and that's just the first thing that just jumped out at me was I didn't record. That's right. Like, whoa, because that's my safety net, right? That's my get out of jail free card. That's what keeps me good, right? Okay, just me as a user researcher, as a neurodiverse user researcher, or as a 12-year pro. I record everything with permission because it's an action replay. There's so much good to be said for a recording. It's also super cringy. I think we've discussed this on before with Debbie. Watching yourself back on your user research session is constantly cringy. Constantly. I get cringy and I do it all day, every day for decades, right? I hate the sound of my voice. I want to punch myself. But I'm not alone in this, okay? It's not just my voice. This is a common phenomenon, okay? Watching it back allows you, firstly, to improve your own patter, your repertoire, your skill, your performance, your method, everything about, because unless you're a sports person, there aren't many places you can get an action replay of you on the job. And user research is showtime for a user researcher. Do you know, it's everything else is prep work. We're front and center when we're in front of users. Recording that so that you make optimal best usage of the time and yourself is the best learning tool of all. If you're cringing, then that's a sign. You need to take a look at it and try to remember to not do that next time. Lead the witness. Touch them inappropriately in the lab or something. I don't know. No, and I say inappropriately on the shoulder. Something stupid like that. Being too touchy, it happens all the time. Being too touchy, believe me. Yes. Also, because taking notes is a bugger, right? You're not focusing on them. It doesn't matter whether you're doing it in person or remotely. There's a lot to take care of in terms of noticing, paying attention, listening. If you're noting, you again, I'm a neuro. There's no way I'm going to be able to look down and write and listen to you at the same time. It's not happening. So a recording is the only thing that keeps me safe. So I can look it back afterwards and actually slow it down. look at the micro gestures and look at the non-verbals. Did I mishear that thick accent or whatever that's going on? Because not everyone's speaking English. There's 1,000 different good reasons why recording is a good thing to do. I'm sorry, I'm talking a lot, Debbie. I should
No,
probably stop
yes
there.
to everything. Yeah, obviously, is my, hold on. Is my microphone? Okay, my microphone's still on. Sorry, I was looking at the wrong thing. Yeah, yes to everything Nick said. You know, obviously you've learned that by not recording, now you're like, oh, what do I remember about what that person just said and did? And ooh, what's my next step? What do I do now? Well, if you had the recordings, you would be feeding them into a tool to do a transcription, or you might even do your own transcription. You would rewatch them and take notes. You would stop and watch again, stop and watch again. Many of the apprentices who have come through my world, they will spend 3 to 5 hours watching 1 hour of video because of the amount of time that they will stop and watch it again and roll it back. And ooh, what did that person do? Let me stop, put up a little sticky note on our Miro board. And so you would be doing your affinity diagram next, but that's based on the notes that you've taken. And so typically we're going into Dovetail, not sponsored, and we're having Dovetail do the transcription. Then we're doing tagging and coding of the things that we saw and heard, and then we can bring that into an affinity diagram for more analysis and synthesis. You really, really have to make sure these are recorded. If for some reason you can't record the video because of privacy or whatever, you have to at least record the audio so that you can hear back what people said later. And I find that a good note-taking idea is to only write down the things you won't hear later on the recording. So for example, you don't have to write down something they said. You're going to hear that later on the recording or see it in the transcript. Write down any note of something that really stood out to you that you won't find on the recording later. So Nick, go ahead.
One of the things that I do, and this is maybe a naughty, I'm just telling you what I do, you know, when I'm doing a user testing session, not necessarily a discovery type session, when I'm testing a prototype or code, I'll actually say, oh, that's a really good point. Note to the recording, make sure that this is blue or whatever is going on. I'll put a note on the recording and I'll say it verbally and they'll hear it. Now, I'm sure that, yeah, I will. I'll do it all the time. And I've been doing it for at least this gig. I've been doing it an awful lot because we've got an awful lot of kind of procurement technical knowledge going on there, of which I'm not a procurement expert. So it's usually a good thing to raise it up so that I don't know it, but I'm acknowledging that I'm going to go and find it out, and it's a note at the same time. It isn't biasing my sessions. It's working really well, but that's just what's working for me at this gig. I'm just putting it out there. It can be a good thing to do, but I can hear lots of people going, oh my God, I can't believe you just said that. But hey,
the thing that I think is at some point we should be merging the technology that we have in digital audio workstations with the technology that we use for CX, UX, and other research. Because, like, for example, if I'm rolling along in my digital audio stuff or my video editing software, and I find a moment in time that I want to go back to, I can usually just hit the letter M. And the letter M drops a marker on that spot, M for marker. And if only I could, now usually I'm in Zoom, hashtag not sponsored, so I can't be like, M, you know, and there's nothing I can hit that says, hey, Zoom, there was something awesome that happened at 12 minutes, 20 seconds in. And I think eventually we should see some tools where people combine some of the nice things that you see in video editing tools and digital audio workstations into the live interview process, like to be able to hit M or just a key or Q for quote. Like sometimes when people say amazing things, I try to note the timestamp and be like, oh, they said an awesome quote at this time. Like I would love to hit like the letter Q on my keyboard and it remembers that was a great quote I want to go back to, and maybe letter M on my, so don't know, but ultimately for this person, the key is going to be record your stuff. And
maybe still. Oh, I'm back. Sorry.
Yeah, I hear you. So I'm going to go to the next question.
Just quickly, both Camtasia and there's a couple of things that will do that. That will do the notation thing. Oh, usertesting.com does it. And also Moray does it. You know, Camtasia. So that quite a lot of the record do this bookmarking or notation that Debbie's describing.
While you're recording the thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Totally.
Oh, and Ralitza says look back does it. Okay, so cool.
Yeah.
I invented something that already exists. I'm so innovative. Okay, so here we go. Welcome back, Debbie. Thank you. Is rolling research a way of getting UX research to fit into the agile process?
Oh, here we go. This is we're back on this one. Okay, let's just cut to the chase. Research in an agile process is rolling by definition, right? It just is. If you're agile and you're doing it in the way that both Debbie and I think that it should work, or it does, is meant to work, is you have research within the sprint, whether it's discovery or testing or both, it's within the sprint. Now, we all know that that's difficult to do when you've got a dev team chomping for tickets and stuff to build. So there is something known as dual or tri-track, which Debbie and I are big proponents of, which gives the UX an opportunity to lay the track in front of the train, i.e. gives you a couple of sprints to do your research and get your insight so that you can feed it back to development when you're comfortable and have iterated and are ready to. If you're saying you've got an agile process and there isn't rolling research, yes, if that's a way of selling it in, so be it, by any means necessary. But to be fair, it should be there anyway.
Yeah, I would have to agree with that. I think that ultimately I'm a fan of tri-track agile. That means research is pretty much its own stream of work, which means something is constantly happening in research, whether it's generative and or evaluative based on how many people you have and who's on the team. If someone wants to call that rolling, I guess they could, but I would just say it's its own stream of work and it's going to feed product strategy, it's going to feed architecture and design, and then eventually that will go to engineering. Tri-track agile just helps illustrate how UX work is really outside of a lot of whatever agility and Scrum and these things are, but that we are all interconnected because ultimately it is a glorified assembly line. That's my thought on that. All right, let me grab the next question because we are getting so many of them. And the next one says, how would you communicate the benefits research in a project proposal? How would you communicate the benefits research in a project proposal to a non-UX manager? I want to use business language and or numbers to be more impactful. I'm working on onboarding and retention. Ooh, this one is ripe. Nick, you first.
I'll be quick because I think this is all you. You speak in their language, use their KPIs, which is why Debbie's like, I think it's basically, in terms of, it's the things that they care about, which is usually something financial or retention or, renewals or whatever that is based. The benefits of research absolutely are sold on, if you meet these needs, these financial benefits will happen, i.e. we will be able to do more for our users. I.e. by doing more for our users, we will take more from them effectively. But you can't do that without knowing what they need and want or hate, right? So that's it. Onboarding and retention are really great, and churn are good, I think, good metrics, because that's what businesses tend to talk about an awful lot. And if you're talking that language, then you're not talking UX, you're talking business.
Yeah, ultimately, I'm just going to add to that because I agree. And I would say some of the key words you can use for business language without being too fancy schmancy would be words like risk, waste, ROI. And basically, if you're talking to someone who is concerned about onboarding, that means they're concerned about the attraction and the adoption of users. Then they're worried about the retention of the users. So chances are you've got a partner in sales. That would be my guess, but though you didn't say that, and I could be wrong. But ultimately, these people want to make sure we're getting customers, we're getting them into the funnel, through the funnel, and then they stay in the funnel forever. Yeah, we retain them. So we want to talk about the risk of not understanding why we lose people. Hey, for the percentage of people we don't retain, how much do we really know about why they're not staying with us? For the people who don't go from paid to trial, how much do we really know about why they're leaving us? So we have to remind people, usually the language that I'm using is, hey, we don't even know why this is happening. Sure, we have guesses. Maybe we think our prices are too high. Maybe we think we're not as slick as the competitor. We've got guesses, but what do we really know? And every customer that we lose is risk for the company. And so I remind people that great research is business and customer intelligence, that these are things that are going to help us with our strategy and help us strategically address what's going on for our users. Are these people dissatisfied? Did they just find a better offer? And just remind people how little we know and how much we're guessing, and that the more decisions we make based on guessing, the more risk and waste we have. So these are some too long sentences, but I would say these are some of the terms that I would be throwing around. Nick.
Whoever asked that question, if you're able to tell us in chat or tell us without going into detail, okay? So I don't want to throw anybody under any buses here. What kind of an industry you work in? Because if it's very if let's say you worked in insurance, in car insurance, which is a very, very competed, price-related market, that's a different conversation. That's a very different conversation, because that person you're talking to, that sales manager, perhaps, who is they will know that sales are 100%. There's a like a one-to-one correlation with the price of the product. You drop the price, you get more people. People are like car insurance. Many people buy on the absolute, like, how, I have to have this thing legally. More than that, I don't give a hoot. I just give me the cheapest thing possible. And that's a very, very different argument. Being a UX person in that kind of a brand, you're going to have to really find some different needs to express value, or to try to get people to spend a little bit more to get something of greater value. I don't even know. I'm guessing at this, but when it's all about price, that's just a straight price war, and UX is often marginalized and sidelined at that point.
And we have to learn what the factors are. They may or may not be price. And so the point is, the research is going to tell us, it's going to answer our unanswered questions. It's going to update our knowledge. It's going to fill in the gaps. It's going to clear up guesses and assumptions. And it's going to answer all kinds of why questions that we don't know now and we're probably guessing about. And I find a lot of companies react to their own guesses. They say like, oh, well, we don't have a lot of retention because they were just tire kickers. No, we don't have a lot of retention because we suck. And so, we have to, you have to find the kind way to say we're probably making some incorrect guesses about why we lose people at different points of the funnel or process. And this research is going to help us know where we're going wrong, whether this is a service issue and it's an interaction with sales or customer support, whether this is a product issue and the product is not really a good match to people, product market fit, or whether, as Nick said, this is pricing, or whether there's so many things it could be, and companies have to stop guessing. I see way too much guessing, and then they react to their guesses, and it's guesses piled on top of guesses. All right, I will bring up the next question. Now, this question is asking about Darren. He's not here, so I don't know if Nick and I can answer this, but it says, Darren mentioned a bad experience with the Salesforce interview process and big tech's hiring focus on more inexperienced UX designers. What are your thoughts on that? Is that accurate, and why?
Okay. I apply for jobs maybe twice a year, permanent jobs. So every year, probably for the past 10 years, I've been applying to places like Amazon and Facebook every now and then. I've got a record recently when I've been applying to Amazon for jobs for the past 8 years, and I've never heard back once. Right? Never been called for interview, nothing. Right? It's not that they've seen me and gone, yeah, he's not the guy for us. They haven't even looked at me. Right? So what does that tell you? I'm a really experienced, good guy with great academics behind me and all kinds of other stuff. You'd think they'd be somewhere in Amazon for me to do some really great work. But they don't even want to interview me to find out what my potential might be, how I might help them, how my PhD work on personalization could be used in Amazon to generate a shit ton of money. But they don't even ask. And why is that? Well, possibly because I'm too old, possibly because I'm too experienced. And what they want, I think, are people who are inexperienced, who they can get them to do their evil bidding, I'm going to say, because otherwise, why wouldn't you get people like Debbie and me to run the show and to do amazing work? I can't understand it. It makes no sense to me. It's not just Amazon, Facebook, Microsoft. They are all the same. This is what I worked my balls off to get a PhD and everything so that I wanted to end up at Facebook doing some amazing personalization work. I've never had, I had one interview there for a UX designer 10 years, 11 years ago. And I can't, they're not interested if you know what you're doing. That's apparently true.
Yeah, it's funny. I posted something on LinkedIn a week or so ago writing about like when you apply for something and you get the email back that says they've gone with someone with more experience than you, but then you see them reposting the job like every week because they can't find the right person. And someone who interviewed me on a podcast wrote in like, well, you have very strong views and some companies will want that and some won't. And it's like, okay, that's true. But like, as Nick said, they're not even looking at me. You know, they got my resume or CV. They didn't even get my portfolio. Like they sometimes they just got an application with like my name and my email and my LinkedIn, and they already decided they don't want me. Hang says, big tech equals FANG. A lot of really experienced designers and researchers like Debbie, Larry, Marine, Darren Hood, Joel Barr, Dr. Nick Fine have not worked for FANGs. Is this an age thing? I haven't not worked for FANG because of my age. I think it's probably because of my ethics. I would never work for Facebook. Netflix doesn't interest me. I could work for Netflix. I don't think they're super unethical. Amazon has ethical bits and unethical bits. I applied to them about a year ago. I heard that the manager was dying to talk to me, and I never heard from them. Apple, I would not work for. I'm not an Apple fan, so that's not going to be for me. And Google has ethical bits and unethical bits. And, you know, sometimes you can't pick what team you're going into. So FANG doesn't really interest me. I think people know me well enough by now to know that I'm more excited about companies that are open to changing and want me to come in and be a change agent. And that's not going to be FANG. Nick?
Of all the ex-Facebook, Microsoft, blah, blah, blah employees, people who have worked there, I've met. And believe me, I've done a lot of contracts, a lot of work. I've been around the block a few times. So I've met quite a few of these types of people. There are I'd say 80% of people that have worked for one of those fall into one of two categories. You're either a career, that kind of a person, right? So I know a guy who's been 10 years, very senior engineering at Facebook. Or you're there for a year and you're out. Okay, it's very, very, very binary. You're one or the other. The first kind tend to be brilliant people who are culturally invested or whatever, personally invested in that brand. And it becomes a part of them and whatever. That's great. Passion, dedication, what have you. Or propaganda, whichever way you look at it. But the other kind of person, the person that spent 1 year or 18 months at Amazon, in a marketing
just wanted it on their
or,
CV.
Yes, are the most dangerous people in our world.
Oh no, I'm still going to put Jared Spool in that spot.
Right, because they come out and they play. Oh, I worked at Amazon, and they had a year there doing.
Oh no, their LinkedIn always says ex-Amazon.
Yeah, right. This is what I'm saying. So the value of it is if you can get in and get a year on your CV, great, because it clears. Anybody will hire you because any moron in HR will go, oh, they've been at Facebook, they must be a safe hire. You know, if they hire them, we should hire them. I don't believe it's good, but that's how you get on with it. So if you can do that, great. I mean, I can't even get an interview.
I don't even want it. But yeah, we had a VP at Macy's who I think was still coasting along on having worked at Apple in like the late 90s. And he was one of the worst UX imposters I'd ever met. And so, but the CV says Apple, so people are like, ooh, and he can go around and say ex-Apple. But as for the original question that's still on the screen, I think we're seeing a lot more mid-level jobs and juniors who need 2 to 3 years experience because, You can pay people less. You can have a never-ending herd of cattle of people who you can pay a lot less, and people who are less likely to rock the boat, less likely to be change agents, less likely to say no, less likely to say that's not the right way to do this. You have a never-ending stream of people who are going to be less likely to make waves and rock the boat. Oh, see you later, Oz. Good to see you. Miss you. So that's why I think we're seeing so many lower level jobs. Somebody sent me one yesterday that was UX researcher, 3 to 5 years of experience. And I said, well, I've got over 10. I'm probably overqualified for this. And they wrote back, the recruiter wrote back and said, yeah, but like, is the pay okay? And I said, not if it's W-2, which for those of you outside of America means that taxes will be withheld. The other way that we get paid in America, or sometimes we call it corp to corp. So I have a corporation in America, and they hire me as a consultant or contractor, and they pay my corporation. So there's a huge financial difference between paying my corporation and not taking out individual earners' taxes, and paying Debbie Levitt and taking out American taxes. So I said, I'll consider that salary if it's corp to corp, but not if I'm going to lose 30% of it to taxes. And
that's what we call IR35 in the UK.
Oh, got it. Yeah, so that's one of the benefits of having my own corporation. But then, of course, I still do pay myself and I still do pay taxes. But the money goes into the corporation first, and then I decide how much I'm paying myself and how much goes to other expenses. So anyway, I should take this question off the screen. We're all over the place now. Nick, go ahead.
But just, the thing that I constantly forget is that if you're a company, your payroll each month or each year, just look at the user researchers. Let's say you're a big company and you've got, I don't know, just say 10 user researchers. 10 user research times 50 grand a year is £500,000 a year. But if you're doing it at 90 grand a year, you're talking nearly £1 million a year. So it absolutely, you cannot have people who are too senior. Otherwise, it just costs too much on your balance sheet. It's just too much money. And these
people
guys
just
are all
see the
about
money. They don't see the benefit or the investment. They just see a number on a spreadsheet and go, oh, that's a lot of researchers.
Yeah. And this is to my point earlier. Unless we're showing real value, we're going to keep getting cut like we were in the kind of early 2010s. And at the beginning of the
pandemic and now.
Yeah, well, okay, when research gets cut from projects because people think it's a waste of time and money.
Right. Yeah, I had a potential client recently give me a list of questions he wished he knew about his users. I said, we can absolutely answer those. And then just as I thought we had a chance of signing that contract, he said, I don't know, I think whatever you're going to tell me is already what my marketing intelligence told me. And I was like, no, not the same. And anyway, next question. Hello, a question for Dr. Nick. How does your knowledge on cognitive psychology integrate into your work? Is it something that helps you make decisions but remains hidden to others? Or do you openly mention that something you're proposing is based on this kind of knowledge?
Okay, that's a good question. I'm going to answer that in two levels, like as a researcher and as a designer, because those are very different applications in our UX world. As a researcher, it helps me understand what I'm seeing in front of me. That's the bottom line. It doesn't help me anything more than that, but understanding how attention works, for example, understanding memory. When you're testing something, a prototype is phenomenally important, especially when you're understanding how that reacts to elements or journey elements, designed on the screen or in the service that you're evaluating. That's super duper important. Can you operate without a knowledge of cognitive psychology? Of course you can, but you're going to get greater resolution. You're going to see more by understanding more. You can't know what you're seeing unless you know what it is first. And that's where cognitive psychology comes in. Do you see what I mean? I hope you know what you mean. On the design side, again, it helps you solution in a way that is more human-centric, in a more usable way. So knowing about, like I said, attention and scan lines and all kinds of different things, which are absolutely relevant to on-page design. So again, can you operate without it? Of course you can. It just helps you solutionize, or be more creative. It helps inform your solutions. That's the best way I can put it. You know what I mean? It's pick up a cognitive psychology book and read it. I mean, that's not a fun thing to do, I should add. Cognitive psychology can get super dry. It's black boxes and models of memory and stuff, which is try reading J.J. Gibson's book on perception. It's crazy. It's not. It's heavy going. Pick up a 101 book, an introduction to psychology, right? This isn't a good one. I'm not recommending this one, but this is a one, right? This is something I got at Costco, right? But by looking at something like that, which is really easy to access, it'll give you ideas of where in cognitive psychology you might want to spend some time and effort, because you don't want to know all of cognitive psychology. It's a big, big, big world, but there is absolutely cog-sci stuff which is relevant to UX. But as a practitioner, as a manager, whatever you are, it's your perspective. So you're going to have to take from cognitive psychology what's interesting and relevant to you. I can't tell you that. But places like perception, memory, Delta CX are really great places to start.
Yeah, and just a reminder, please subscribe here on the YouTube channel. Even though I'm shadow banned, we finally passed 5,300 subscribers, so please help us spread the word because YouTube generally does not. Also, please remember that deltacx.com/links has all the information you're probably going to want to know about this show. We've got a calendar of events, how to send in questions, how to send in other stuff, joining our free Slack and Discord communities, so please go check it out and learn the things. Elliot says the book Design for Cognitive Bias is pretty interesting. I'm halfway through it.
But remember, cognitive bias, just because it shares the word cognitive, yes, that's all about bias, and that's a super duper important thing for a researcher to understand, or for anyone to understand. But the world of cognition is large. And also, I'm not much of a fan of cognitive. If you're a psychologist, cognitive, biological, social, personality, all these various areas of psychology are kind of competing with each other because they're kind of different doctrines, right? Like biological generally believes that the stuff that you think comes from your body, like adrenaline and I'm being really thin. But in terms of me and psychology and UX, I'm a behaviorist. I care what people do. Cognitive people want to draw boxes, and we don't know about this mind thing. We infer from the outputs and all kinds of stuff that we do. But you can't crack someone's head open and look at a love structure and understand it. You just can't do that. It's not happening. So you have to look at behavior around love as a good example, right? To try to understand it. Try to understand love from a cognitive perspective. You can sort of deconstruct it. Well, I saw the person and I felt a certain thing. Some people will argue that you lose an awful lot by over deconstructing. So the point is look at behaviorism, look at cognitivism, have a look at general psychology. Cognitive and neuro, are words that get bandied around a ton. Have a look at the book, flick through it, get some ideas, and then you'll be able to zone in on what's interesting to you.
All right, moving on. I had the question up. Sorry about that. Have we reached peak UX point where almost everything has been researched and done now and true innovation is now just not happening anymore, perhaps due to tons of copying and emulating others' work? Ooh, a few different moving parts here.
Yeah, but my gut reaction is we're probably at the exact opposite end of that. Like, right?
We're at the top of Mount Arrogance.
Yeah, we're sitting on Mount Stupid, smoking weed and doing jack shit. That's where we are, calling ourselves seniors, drawing pictures in Figma. We haven't reached peak UX. Peak UX, from my perspective, was probably around 2012, 2013, before the gold rush, when UX was really going somewhere, and then got completely hampered and stymied and killed by UX UI and all of that stuff. Has innovation been hampered? No, of course not. The whole world of UX is open to us. Oh my gosh. Is that yours?
We've talked about this, Nick.
No, we haven't. I've never seen that before.
Oh, yeah. This was my plate in 2011.
No way!
Yeah.
So you created the UX UI thing. It was you.
No, that was already in use because I was in San Francisco. So this was
Really?
so this at the time in 2011 this meant like I'm a UX practitioner who works on user interfaces. It didn't mean I'm
Yeah.
a graphic or visual or brand designer. That got
Yeah.
hijacked later, but this was my original plate.
Very cool. I love it. So yeah, we're nowhere near peak UX. People get hung up on this innovation thing, like somehow UX or somehow like we're the antithesis of innovation. I mean, innovation, getting ideas on how to make your users' world or neat lives better is only a good thing, right? Like understanding the needs of your audience, understanding their pains, is inherently innovative, right? I mean, or how you solve the innovation comes from the solution, designing a solution once you've understood those needs, or coming up with a solution within a particularly difficult context, like outer space, underwater, or I don't know, a high stress situation. There's lots. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to jump in. So I would say almost nothing has been researched. We know almost nothing. The things that have been researched have too often been researched incorrectly or with a shitty survey. So
Yeah.
I'm going to go with no. We rarely see true innovation. In fact, while I'm talking, I want everyone who's watching us live, which is like 30 people, I want everyone to tell me what is the last greatest true innovation that you've seen. Now, remember, an innovation by definition is something that is completely new, an invention, something that hasn't been done before. It's not like, ooh, the iPhone 12 had a better camera than the iPhone 11. That's not an innovation. That's an evolution, not a revolution. Tell me, what is the last truly innovative thing that you can think of? Because usually when I ask that question, I get a lot of people talking about medicine and science, and they don't talk about UX and websites and SaaS systems. That's not where innovation's happening. And so we talk, like Nick said, we throw around the word innovation. We talk about innovation. We claim we want to be innovative. We claim we are innovative, and we're not. Ralitza says the computer. Yes, thank you. The computer was a fantastic innovation. And Janice will add your question to the end. It's an interesting one.
When I was on holiday in Tenerife about a month or two ago, I had to add. I was using my Monzo card because Monzo allows you to spend money abroad without any foreign exchange charges. They've got this way. The UX was the slickest, most badass UX I've seen in a long, long time. In fact, talking to that other question, it reminded me of UX in 2013. It's proper good, amazing, sexy diamond UX. Good shit. Basically, you can top up your Monzo card by, within the Monzo app, clicking on your bank, in my case, First Direct, and basically giving yourself like a reverse authorization to take money to put it on the Monzo card, on my Monzo card. But it's within about literally 2, maybe 3 clicks. It's super streamlined. It's absolutely effing amazing. I mean, hats off to Monzo. Their UX team is on it. They are. That's gold standard stuff. I'm totally blown away, and that's innovative.
All right. So while we get some more innovations in from people, that'll be on the screen. Our next question is, what do you think are the reasons people avoid methods like contextual inquiry and observation?
Oh, wow. Sometimes it's laziness, like it takes effort to go somewhere, right? And actually standing around for several hours. And let's face it, contextual inquiry is one of those words that everybody uses in a bloody interview and on a CV. But you actually push them on it, you just get a different response, should we say? Standing there for 8 hours in the peeing rain, watching people do stuff at an ATM or a public access terminal is no fun. It takes stamina. It takes hard work. You try taking notes in the rain when it's raining, in the wind. It's not easy. You tried keeping your electronics dry, right? This stuff ain't fun, and you have to have done it to know Or another one, heuristic evaluation. That's another one that gets completely abused. People have never done it. Why do you think people avoid contextual inquiry and general observation? Because it's easier to ask people stuff, or people don't have the confidence because they've never done it before. So we do surveys, we do interviews because that's what we do. You see what I mean? Actually getting out there, getting to the cold front. That might be standing in a shop, standing outside the shop, and just standing and listening passively in a more ethnographic style. Just listening for the louder voices or the bangs and smashes, the flow of people during the day, and getting a sense of the life of the building, of the business, of what's going on. That can be quite scary and daunting. And if you're doing it on your own in an mentored way, how the heck do you know what the hell you're doing? You're just standing in a Tesco's or in a supermarket looking clueless, also looking like a thief because you didn't speak to the manager first because you don't know what you're doing, and next thing you know, you're being picked up by security.
This escalated quickly.
But this shit happens. It does. Even when I've got permission, I'm paranoid. I mean, it's a professional thing. I think those are the reasons why people possibly avoid it. The answer is, and I'll tell you this, if you haven't done contextual inquiry and kind of more observation methods, JFDI, just do it. Don't wait for academics or training. Just get in the field. Get your feet dirty or hands dirty, whatever. Get out there and do it. You'll learn. Get
your eyeballs really dirty.
Fast. So yeah, you will learn fast. You will just learn. You will learn. It might take you a little while and you'll make mistakes, but those are the best ways to learn. Just do it in an ethical way where privacy and all the other bits and pieces are respected. Get permission.
And I'm going to jump on this one as well, though, even though I agree with Nick, I've got a different angle on this. And I think the main reason why, not necessarily, you said people avoid methods. Now, I think Nick addressed it from the perspective of why do some researchers avoid it? I'm going to take the perspective of why do some companies avoid it? And I think that companies don't understand the power of this research method. They don't really understand, in general, very often, companies and the people working at them don't understand the difference between most research methods. They don't know what's the difference between individual interviews, focus groups, observational types of studies, a survey. They just figure what's the fastest and the cheapest thing we can do that gives us a lot of answers. Oh, it's a survey. Let's just go run some surveys and we're going to know the answers. That's it. That's all we have to do. Send out a survey, learn the answers, done. Why are we going to talk to people and watch them do stuff? So I think a lot of companies are making choices based on what they perceive as a time and money savings. We can run a survey and analyze it in a week versus clearly weeks or longer for a really good, even remote digital observational type of study. So I think that they're rejecting it generally from not understanding the benefits it can bring, not understanding why it's different and better than other methods, and just thinking it's not worth time and money. And the point that I tend to make in a lot of my workshops, and it's in my upcoming book, is last year Apple spent $21 billion on R&D, what we call research and development. And R&D is a department that used to be at most companies, and many companies got rid of their R&D departments, though not Apple. And the idea was that you would have a department and all they did was understand, let's roll it out. Who knows what I'm going to roll out? All they do is understand people, systems, context. They understand technology. They understand what's likely to come next. They understand what people need and what might address that. These were people who were usually scientists and researchers, and they really wanted to understand people and what we could possibly create that's going to cater to people so well they couldn't have even imagined that solution themselves. And so, I've been reading up lately on how the cassette tape was invented, and then I was looking at how the CD was invented. And these are extremely interesting because on the one hand, you feel like cassette tape, so what? We had a reel-to-reel tape, then we had a small cassette tape, so what? But this was really a difficult invention for what was Philips, and they had a lot of really interesting user-focused reasons to want a small portable cassette instead of a giant reel-to-reel tape and the giant machine that had to read the reel-to-reel tape. I mean, I remember working for Steely Dan in the 90s in their recording studio, and they rolled in two 24-track Sony digital machines. I mean, these things were like the size of a washing machine, and they had to roll in, and they had taken them everywhere on tour with them to record their album. And so they had to roll around two things the size of washing machines to record their album live. Now you could do it on your phone. Now you could do it on a laptop plugged into the soundboard. Now the soundboard does it itself. I mean, these are things that we don't think about, and these are things that typically come because of observing how people do stuff. And somebody watching goes, wow, why is Steely Dan dragging around two washing machine size stuff and a whole bunch of tapes that if they get too close to a magnet they'll get erased? You know, how do we solve that? So yeah, generative research, Afzal, exactly. So the generative, high quality, give us good information research, people just don't get it. They think we can either send out a survey or we can just release something and find out later if they liked it. Wah, wah. All right, we got three more questions.
The best way to learn about anything is to look at it directly.
Yeah. I can't say enough about that for sure. Yes. Okay, three more questions, and this one is not coming up on the screen right now. My system is being grumpy, so I will read it out. It says, thoughts on why Dr. Nick Fine called UI UX designers the bastard offspring of UX design and UX research in his video, UX Psychology.
Yeah, I did. What do I call them? The bastard offspring of what?
It looks like you called them the bastard offspring of UX design and UX research.
Yeah, basically, yes. Remember, I recorded that video in 2016 or 2017 or sometime around then. UX UI has kind of evolved and changed, but not that far from, not enough to, that still holds true. Why UX UI? Because what has happened is that UX UI people have seen what we as UX people do and thought that they are more empowered or better people or whatever to do that work. UX was always research and design, but all people ever saw was the output in the design, not all the preparatory work that went into it. And so they're copying the output, and they're copying the wrong thing. So these are UI people, visual designers, what have you, who wanted to get into the UX gold rush. And so they took their UI, which is what they do, and just slapped UX in front of it. So a designer became a UX designer. I mean, shit, we had UX developers, UX project managers, UX everything. Now got UX copywriters, UX writers, UX content people, all kinds of stuff. The point is that everything should be user-centric anyway. But UX UI still refuses to evolve or change. It's just UX UI is a synonym for interaction design. That's the way I look at it.
Okay, so I didn't say this. This is Nick's quote, but just something that I wanted to throw in. Thank you, Shrivas. I secretly sneezed there. Yeah, I somewhat agree. You saw my license plate. That term used to be respected and understood that it was what I did. It was what Larry Marine did. And then all of a sudden it meant I'm a visual designer and I want to get paid what UX people are getting paid. So I'm just going to say I do UX also. And the problem was because companies didn't, and sadly still don't, understand what UX is. They just thought like, oh yeah, these pretty portfolios and Behances and dribbles, yeah, that must be what these people are doing. And I want to recommend an article that I wrote recently called Is UX a Skill or a Skill with Activities? And it's an article directly designed to answer what you tend to hear a lot now from agile coaches and scrum masters, where they say we don't need a UX specialist on our team. UX is just a skill. And anybody on the Agile team can have that skill. And I was on a really cool Agile podcast recently. If you haven't seen it, check it out. No Nonsense Agile, episode 50. You can probably Google that. Great interview with two really neat guys. And they basically brought that up. Like, isn't UX just a skill? Can't anybody do this? And I said, oh, great. This is a perfect opportunity. Two decent guys asking me this question. I said, if UX is a skill, what is that skill? And they started listing our artifacts. They said, oh, well, prototypes, wireframes, talking to people, customer journey maps. And I said, I'm so glad we're talking about this. I said, these are not the skills. Making the document doesn't mean you have the skill to do the work well. Anybody can make a prototype. The prototype is not the skill. The skill is everything that went in to the work that you did, which is represented by the documentation. Like the skill is not in the documentation of the work. The skill is in how the work was done. Let's not mistake the documents of our work for the work. That would be like saying, well, the real skill of being a doctor is adding to the patient's chart. Well, the real skill in being a doctor is what did you add to the patient's chart, because how did you do the doctoring? And so I wrote that into an article, and it's going to end up in my book as well. But it's something we definitely have to battle, because where Agile and Scrum is trying to take control of UX, they're saying UX is just a skill, and anybody on the Agile team can have that skill. And it's the old, yes, Toonsis the cat can drive, just not very well. And the cat drives everybody off the cliff. Sure, anybody can make a prototype, but very few people will make a good prototype. So
brain surgery. Brain surgery is just a skill.
Yeah, I love to say I can cut your hair, but you won't be happy that I did. So, unless you're Nick, then that haircut I can do.
Can I just have a comfort break, please? Because that beer is just kind of...
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you.
Nick's going to take a quick bio break, and I'll just chat with the live audience and remind everybody, this is Office Hours Ask Me Anything. We do this every Tuesday at 6:30 p.m. Italy time, and very often we have special guests. In fact, I have some more special guests lined up for you in the coming weeks. Let's take a look at who's going to be joining us. Next week, I do have Matthew Voshel scheduled. He joined us earlier this year, and people seem to like him. So we're hoping to have him back. He had to reschedule. Hopefully, next Tuesday still works for him. Tuesday, the 30th, we have the beyond awesome Trina Moore Purval. You know her as UX for the win. If you follow her on Instagram or maybe on LinkedIn, I am so excited that she's going to come and answer questions live. I'm a big fan of her. Tuesday, September 6th, we're scheduled to have Tom Kerwin back. I'll have to check with him that it still works for him. And let's see, who's our special guest? Of course, on the 13th of September, we're planning to have Dr. Nick back and possibly Darren. So hopefully that'll work for them. Let's see, Tuesday the 20th, we're going to have John N.A. Brown back as our guest on Office Hours. So yeah, you're not going to see me alone for quite a while. In fact, John is going to become a recurring guest. For those of you who might have seen John on an earlier episode, hopefully you fell in platonic love with him as I did. And so he's going to be back. Nick, that was smoky and interesting. I would say Nick has a smoke machine, but it's really just a vaping device. So we've got lots of great people coming up on the Office Hours, and so we're here every Tuesday to take your questions. Hung says, I can't wait to ask Dr. Nick the same question again next time around. So and you did ask it last month as well. So Nick, be prepared that next month Hung's going to ask how the courses are coming. All right, let me put up the next question. I think we have two more, and then we can probably wind it down. I'll check if I've missed any questions. Hey, Nick and Debbie. Oftentimes, I've been the only UX researcher in a team. Do you have any advice on how to find people to learn from and bounce my ideas so that I can advance in my career as a UX researcher?
Yeah, so this sounds like you're a lone wolf, if you know what I mean.
Team of one.
Yeah, but do you know what? So the world has moved on quite a lot in 2022, and there should be lots of kind of user-centric, friendly other practices out there. So product people, there are good people, should be good people to start with, i.e., they should be your friends. um, the other person is the web analyst or somebody in that kind of a function, because that effectively is the kind of the quant analyst or the statistical analyst of the digital world today. They're both really excellent people who will both serve different functions towards kind of your career advancement. The other really good thing to do is, everybody should do this anyway, but for you, question asker, it will help peacock or identify yourself to these people. And this is, make your outputs very publicly available. Okay, so effectively kind of, let's say, market your insights
Publicly within the company.
Within the company, yes, absolutely. Within the company internally. This is all about doing one pages with maybe an A/B test on it that shows 30% higher conversion because of bullet point and bullet point. Super simple, easy to acquire. If you're in a building, you put it on footfall areas, on whiteboards, near the lift, in the lift, places like that. If you're remote, then you do it through the intranet, you do it through mailing lists, through Slack, and through every other channel that you've got. The point being is that by surfacing this stuff, you're saying, I'm a user-centric person in this company, and I'm interested in how our users are behaving, or I'm interested in our users' needs. Other people, like product folk or a director or whatever, will go, that's really cool, and they'll mail you going, I'm super interested in this, will you keep me up to date, or invite me to show and tells, or this sorts of stuff. Again, I said the show and tell word. Show and tells demos, another excellent place to market your insights, which is another place for you to peacock yourself, to be able to invite people who have got similar kinds of passions and interests to network with them, basically.
And what I'm going to throw in on this question is the way that I take this question. And that's part of what I love about Dr. Nick being here. Sometimes we just take questions totally differently and we give people lots of different angles on something. And I really enjoy that. I take this one more as, you need a mentor or a coach. Because you might be the only researcher on the team, possibly the only researcher in the company, you're saying, at least what I'm hearing is, you don't have somebody more senior that you can go to and say, look at my work, check my work, am I doing the right thing, help me level up, where can I improve? And that's where you need mentoring and coaching. So I would say, if you can't go inside the company to find that person who's going to be that mentor or coach, if your manager does not have a good background being a UX research specialist, then you have to look outside the company for people who can be that mentor or coach. Miroslav says, yes, I would need a coach who's more senior. Yeah, so, excuse me.
This is a problem.
Yeah.
This is a problem. It's like mentorship isn't coming.
No, the companies don't give it anymore, and not even to juniors. That's why that's why the companies ask for even juniors that have 2 years of experience. Then they don't have to mentor and coach you. They figure, you've done this for 2 years, you can do this. You don't need help. And so the problem is that companies are not, they claim professional development, but then they don't really support you. And that's why it's so important in job interviews to be asking these types of questions. See episode 129 about questions we should be asking. Go to YouTube, right, Delta CX 129, check the old episode. So I think you have to look outside for that mentor or coach. And where do you find them? Go to people you admire. Go to people you admire and see if they're taking on mentees. Now, the difference to me between mentoring and coaching, and now other people have different definitions. Mine's going to be different. My definition is that mentoring and coaching is the same. Mentoring is free and coaching is paid. Some people have other definitions. That's okay too. Mine is, to me, a mentor should be doing coaching. A coach should be doing coaching and mentoring. These are the same. But I call what I do, when it's free, I call it mentoring. And even when it's free, I sometimes call it coaching. And then there's also paid coaching. I do offer one coaching session for free to everyone on the planet. You only get one. You can go to deltacx.link/coaching. And you get a half hour with me privately to talk about whatever you want. But when people want to show me their work and get feedback on the work or have me help them with their research plan, even if it's their real job work, we do sign an NDA and I keep your secrets. Some people are comfortable with that. Some people feel like they can't show me their stuff no matter what. But I do have people who pay for my coaching time to take a look at that stuff. I'm charging 50 American dollars a half hour. It is the lowest coaching rate I have seen from all the people out there, so I'm trying to make it affordable. Ralitza says, also a lot of learning is doing the work and seeing what works or not. Yes, do it. Yes.
I would totally encourage that these days. I would really would. Because mentorship is so rare, real seniors and getting access to them or them having time or you affording them is difficult, you know. I think you have to make the assumption that mentorship isn't coming. Like I know that's depressing and it's not good to hear because that's the best way to learn. But you got to have a plan B for when you haven't got a mentor because your learning can't stagnate. And a lot of that is self-learning. And what Relitza is saying there about learning what works and what doesn't work. Like making those mistakes is part of your journey, and it's uncomfortable, it's horrible, it's not great, but no one's going to die here. Okay, we're not doing rocket science, we're not doing anything medicine, right? As long as you're staying within the ethical boundaries, then make those mistakes. It's better to get on and learn the hard way than not learn at all, or learn the wrong thing from all these charlatans on YouTube.
There's that too. Yeah, so hopefully that helps. Hung says that's an amazing rate. Thanks, Debbie. Yeah, I just figured I would rather make it affordable because I know sometimes people have sent me, when we do the reaction, the critical thinking stream on Friday, and we take a look at sometimes people send me UX YouTubers videos, and they often have a plug for themselves in the description, like get coaching from me. I think we saw one woman who I won't name, a well-known UX YouTuber with 10, 15,000 followers, subscribers on YouTube. And I think she was charging $230 for a half hour.
No way.
Yeah. So I've seen 200 an hour. I've seen 150 an hour. So yes, I'm undercharging at 100 American an hour. I know that even so, it's still going to be unaffordable for some people due to not working or currency or whatever. But I'm trying to, I'm trying to make it as fair as possible for everybody. So, if I can give you some coaching, please let me know. But there's only so much I can give away for free because everybody knows my world is packed. All right, so we've got, I think this one's going to be a long answer, so this is going to be probably our last question for today, but I think this is going to end up being a long discussion, and Janice had asked, Janice always with the good questions, what was happening in 2012 and 2013 when UX was at its peak? And we were both there, so I think we can talk about this at a little bit of length. Nick, why was UX at its peak about 10 years ago?
So all the people that I looked up to, like the seniors and the leads and all the kind of like the leading lights in the industry around that time, were a certain kind of a person, a certain kind of a mix of kind of science and art or science and design. These were cool people, but they had a scientific kind of background or understanding, but were also arty-farty creative types. It was a beautiful mix. And what everybody shared in common was this kind of not hippy-dippy need, but this genuine desire to improve our digital world, to make the world a better place, to make things more usable, easier to use, and doing that in really cool, innovative ways. That's what UX was all about. And UX practitioners, whether they were called a UX architect, which I was called a UX consultant, we were all research and design. So every project, if it had UX in it, meant that you were getting research in it. It was inherently user-centric. So I would work with the studio manager or the traffic manager, nowadays a product or project manager, to say I need X amount of time to do the research or the recruiting, the research, and then I'll do the wireframing, and then we'll test it, and then we'll do another round of testing, and then I'm going to get it built, and etc. Right? That's how the world worked. The messages that were going out there in the world, the memes that were shared were, "You are not the user." All of this stuff. If you look on my Twitter account, my banner hasn't changed in 12 years. It says UX minus UT does not equal UX, i.e. UX without user testing is not UX, right? And it was pretty militant, but it's still bang on today, 12 years later. So UX was at its peak.
Thanks to Madalena. She's just made a small donation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So in 2012, 2013, the practice was genuinely about understanding needs and designing an innovative, cool solution. But what everybody saw was the people doing non-designers, non-traditional designers, doing innovative, cool, wireframey type stuff that they weren't doing. And that's what created UX UI. It was the FOMO. It was designer FOMO. What we need to get back to is that inherent user centricity that drove the practice. You have to remember, there was already a design practice in place in digital. What differentiated UX from design is the fact that UX is about user needs and designing to them, solving problems. Okay, design doesn't do that. Design does solve problems in different ways, different problems, but not interaction design sorts of problems or HCI problems that UX was born to do. So when you take away the user centricity, you're just left with another visual design or interaction design practice. And that's what UX UI is. That's why I'm so vociferous, why I'm so rude, why I just don't care, because those people are ruining our world, not just our practice. They are charlatans, they're blaggers, they're doing the wrong thing. The problem is that UX UI is now an established term. We ain't going back. It's here to stay. So at some point, I'm going to have to call myself a UX UI person. I'm going to kill myself. But that's another story. Anyway, Debbie, that's my long answer.
Okay, I've been making a lot of notes about this. I've never written an article specifically about this. I wrote a little bit in my Delta CX book about kind of how did we get here, which is not my best David Byrne impression. But let's talk a little bit about what was happening about 10 years ago. First of all, most companies had not yet adopted any form of Agile. So we did not have the pressure of speed. It was more important to take some extra time because things were waterfall. Projects were longer. I remember in 2012, I was working at Wells Fargo, an American bank, and our project, I was on the specialized mobile design team. Now we assume that every designer knows mobile, but that back then that was a freaking specialty. And I was on the mobile design team designing Wells Fargo's first native iPad app. They didn't have an iPad app. It was 2012. And so that project took a year and a half. Nowadays, if you tell somebody they were going to take a project, the project's going to be a year and a half, people shit their pants and they go, oh, it's not agile. And then everybody goes, okay, how do we make it 2 weeks long and rush out something crappy? So back in 2012, even though Agile existed, a lot of companies hadn't integrated it, so we didn't have this pressure for speed over quality. We also didn't have things like Safe Agile. You know, nobody was talking about Safe Agile back then, which is the worst flavor of Agile. We didn't have the Lean UX book. The Lean UX book came out in 2012 and was widely regarded as milquetoast. So Gotthelf and whoever his faces rewrote it, re-released it in 2016, and that's the version that's destroying UX. So we didn't have the second edition of the Lean UX book that is murdering UX. Jared Spool was a concept. Jared Spool was a guy you heard of, but you really didn't see him everywhere because social media wasn't a thing yet. Now Jared Spool says something and a whole bunch of people can press like and retweet it and it rides this wave of shitty whatever. But if Jared Spool said something in 2012, 6 people knew about it. So he couldn't hurt us as much. In 2012, I was asked to solve problems. I was asked to take time and solve a problem. How much time do you need to solve this client's problem? Debbie, what is the best way to solve this client's problem? I freelance at a lot of agencies in San Francisco. Debbie, we have a big client. They have a problem. Help us out here. I got brought in on really weird projects that I think a lot of companies wouldn't even bother with now, partially because skill sets have changed and partially because perceptions of UX have changed. I remember a squillion years ago, an agency, Fjord, brought me in, very big famous agency, brought me in for like 2 months, and all they wanted me to do was build a full fidelity, fully visually designed Axure prototype of Kohl's tablet website to make sure it looked good on iPads. And I had to build that based on, I wasn't even the interaction designer. I was being paid a squillion dollars an hour just to make an actual prototype that was going to be shown to executives so they could see how the tablet website was going to look on an iPad. I got paid for weeks of work just to do this. In fact, I had to put a little dot on the screen to show the executives where to tap to go to the next thing.
Yes, I love that. I did that.
Yeah. And nowadays, we wouldn't bother with that, or people would just Figma something up, and that's fine. But like, that was an amazing specialized thing. I can't tell you how many times I got brought into companies. We were talking about this morning on the other office hours I did. I can't tell you how many times I got brought into companies between 2012 and 2016, 17, where people would say to me, you know, it was like Star Wars, Debbie, you're our last hope. You know, we hired 2 other people. We had to fire both of them. They lied about what they could do. We heard about you. You know, you're more expensive, but we need you because this project has now failed twice. So by the time people were coming to me, very often I was cleaning up a giant mess, and it had to be done right. It couldn't just be done fast. It couldn't be done low skill. It had to be done right. And so there was, from some companies, at least around San Francisco, a real investment in, we got to get this right. The other thing I've written down was that I was very active in the Silicon Valley startup community in 2011 through about 2015, 2016. Really involved in it. We did lots of pitching. I had a startup. We got a little bit of money. We went through the whole thing. And I remember when I started out with the startup, the main thing you heard in like 2010, 2011 was, you need to find amazing developers because you're going to build technology. So you've got to go find the best developers you can and put your money towards developers. Well, by the time 2012, 2013 rolled around, the magic of what was then called outsourcing and offshoring had hit this amazing peak. And what happened was the word around San Francisco, San Jose, Silicon Valley was now, developers are a dime a dozen. You can get amazing, highly talented developers from India for peanuts, you know, for pennies. You know, developers are a dime a dozen, they were saying in Silicon Valley. Go hire these smart people over in India to build your stuff. And then they said what you really need is great UX. They were telling every startup, you can find developers easily, go hire India. You need great UX because you need great product market fit. Because if you want to succeed as a startup, you have to show that you built a good product for the right audience. You have to show that people want to use this thing. You need great UX. So I started going to hackathons, and I started going to I started showing up at places. Startups would hire me. Sometimes it was small projects, $2,000 here, $3,000 there. They didn't have a lot of money, but startups were hungry for good UX. Now startups don't care about UX at all because they've all read books that said, doesn't matter, just rush something out and see how it goes. And nobody cares about the cycles of waste that creates. But 10 years ago, the word on the street was, nothing beats product market fit. Take the time to get this right. Nick.
Yeah, now product people in startups are being told, you know, what, you don't need to hire UX. You do the user research yourself. And having a naive or a junior product manager doing effectively junior user research is the worst kind of insight that a product manager should be working from.
Yeah, so I don't know if Janice is still here, if this is helping. I don't know if anybody. Okay, we still have about 30 people. Like, is this interesting to people? Nobody has said anything. It got really quiet. But this is the answer to why are Nick and Darren and Larry and other people talking about what this was like. Because I think another thing that I can add, and Nick, you can tell me if this was your experience, was that because this was pre-boot camps, because this was before boot camps, because to me, one of the first boot camps was really General Assembly, but they started getting big in like 2015, 2016. So what happened was in 2011, 12, 13, 14 into 15, 16, UX was so in demand from companies that cared about the user experience. They couldn't find all the Debbies and Nicks. And we were getting paid wild money, and we were in demand. It was a running joke with the boyfriend I had at the time when I was living in San Francisco with him. It was the running joke of, oh, okay, one of my contract jobs just ended. How many days will I go without work until the next job? And at one point it was like, I think the record was like 2 days. Like I ended a job, and then like 2 days later I had a new job, and like without barely trying. And so I didn't have a portfolio. You know, we talk sometimes about that Jared Spool tweet that goes around that says the best designers don't have portfolios. And people think that that means that today they shouldn't have a portfolio, but they forget that Jared Spool tweeted that in 2016. And it was half true at the time, in that if you were an experienced UX professional in 2016, like I was, and possibly Nick, and you know, I don't know if I don't want to speak for Nick's experience, but I barely had to look for a job. I barely needed a portfolio, especially in San Francisco. People would call me up and say, "We heard about you. Are you available?" And they didn't even ask for a portfolio. Some of them didn't ask for an interview. So, Hung says, Janice says, yes, thanks for sharing these stories. Hung says, this is the last of the Mohicans. Ralitza says, something I'd like to mention that will probably even sound worse is recent research I got privy of that shows the tragically low percentage of investment and carrying out of discovery research. Daniel says, very insightful. Yeah, it is a very low investment in that, because again, people read all kinds of books about you just need an MVP, you just need a design sprint. Remember, this was before design sprints. This was before design thinking. You know, these things kind of existed in small pockets, but they didn't have the mainstream popularity they have now. Nobody said, the first time somebody said design sprints to me was 2014. And even though the book had been out for a few years, it hadn't really taken off. And so design thinking, design sprints, lean UX, you know, all the things that we complain about now killing our industry, that wasn't happening 10 years ago. But it's also why the early boot camps were saying things like, oh my God, there's more jobs than people. So if you can just go through our boot camp, you're just going to get a freaking job at the end of it, and it's going to pay wildly. True in 2016, not true in the last few years, because now there's 450,000 people that went through Google's UX course. I don't want to compete against 450,000 people for a job. So it's a totally different time. And when you're looking at some of these old tweets, like things Spool tweeted in 2016 and whatever, you have to be really careful, because what might have been true about UX or work or our industry in 2016 is a million worlds away now.
Yeah. And also quite a lot of what product people talk about at conference and in books is all straight UX. It was basically ripped. I'm not talking about roadmaps and prioritization. I'm not talking about that stuff. But you talk about experimentation and hypothesis testing and all of that. It's all stuff UX was doing 10 years ago. It's getting really messy out there because lots of people are treading on each other's toes. Again, comes down to a very loose definition of UX and to an extent product. But
yeah, I mean, that's why you hear me and Darren and Larry and Nick and other people sounding like we're complaining, but it's only because we remember a very different time. We remember going to a job and being respected. We remember going to a job where someone said, I really need you, and they meant it. And they were going to give me the time I needed to do the best work. I remember doing 6-month projects, not because they were waterfall, but because somebody wanted UX research and UX design done correctly before engineering started.
I spent a couple of years at an amazing agency, a publicist agency called SAS, in, I don't know, around 2015, 2014. I ended up being head of UX there. But the point being, I was one of 2 UXs, ultimately 3 UXs, in a very elite studio filled with very, very high-end visual designers. Amazing, Royal College of Art, Camberwell, Falmouth, Chelsea, superbly talented, cherry-picked, amazing individuals. I was working for SAB Miller, the big beer company, the international beer company, and nobody had ever looked at their information architecture. And we were building, I think they called it the next generation of beer experiences or something like that. The long story short was I put the IA on the wall in Post-it notes and I'm working through it. And all these elite designers had never seen anything like this before in their lives. And the reason why this was such a great experience is because having visual designers who are freaking awesome at their trade, at their practice, mixing with somebody doing UX was a really beautiful, amazing thing. It was completely complementary. It opened their minds. All of the work that they were doing opened my mind. And when you've got real UX and real UX thinking, it does nothing but make everybody, the culture, the way people think, the insight that they get, solutions that come from it, the inspiration. It's phenomenal, but it's such a rare. The reason why I talk about the old days is because it was not around ego. It was around having that common platform, or at least that shared understanding, or open minds, that meeting of minds. Whereas now you've got so many designers bullshitting and blagging what we do without knowing what we actually do. You can't do that knowledge transfer anymore. That respect is gone, and it's all front. And what's actually suffering are the products and the services. And if you look around, I can pick holes in pretty much everything I interact with. And that wasn't true 10 years ago.
So we've got Ralita asking, what's a good way to challenge unrealistic timelines?
Oh, God, I don't know, because I'm working to them right now. What happens is that management often, come up with a number out of the air, say you're going to deliver on this date, and that's the way it works. You know what? I mean, the way I'm working it here is currently is literally trying to fix the process so that we do the right things in the right order without getting into any detail, giving any confidences. We're doing the wrong things in the wrong order. So going faster is just about optimizing and working smarter. But again, it's taking 18 months to change this stuff. It doesn't happen quickly.
Yeah, and so what I would say for unrealistic timelines, and I know we're running out of time and we have people asking new questions now, so sorry, we're going to have to squish the last few answers and say no more questions again. I think that you just have to set expectations. If someone has an unrealistic timeline and they're rigid about that, you say, okay, you're only giving me 2 weeks to do this. Here's what I can do in those 2 weeks. And I just want to make sure you understand that if that's the timeline, this is what you're going to get. Now, by the way, here's what I could do if you gave me 4 weeks, or here's what I could do, if you really wanted my best work, here's what I could do in 5 weeks. And here's my plan. I've drawn it up for you. So again, I would prefer to do the 5-week version because it would be my best work and your best outcomes. If we do the 2-week version, here's the different outcomes from that, and here's some potential risks because we had a reduced timeline or we rushed it or whatever you want to say. So,
but be really careful if you're a contractor or like that, because there's always somebody that will tell them what they want to hear. And that can be an issue. You can be released from your contract and they'll take the person on that told them what they wanted to hear and then be right back in the same position of late delivery and not getting what they want, or something more limited in functionality than they were expecting.
Yeah, also true. Whenever you push back, you have to decide, can I do this? Do I want to do this? Could this risk my job or relationships? It is what it is. Yeah. Thanks, Faye said it was SAS. That was a long time ago, Faye. We're trying to wrap up the show. Okay, we have a quick question from Prince, which is, what does continuous research mean and how do you measure its effectiveness? Do we have a lightning version for that?
Okay, lightning version is continuous research is doing it literally every week, business as usual. So it's not necessarily project or product related. You're just doing research all the time, either within sprint or however it works for you. How do you work with it? It's all about the effectiveness of the insight. So what if KPIs? But if you're talking about money,
Jamie.
How much money did you make as a result of doing that user research? Or how much cost did you save or churn or whatever those metrics are? That's the quick lightning answer.
Cool. And what I would ask to that, for we spoke earlier today, I know this is a long video to try to go back and find that point, but we did speak earlier about Track Agile and how putting research on its own stream of work is essentially continuous research. So I would say maybe try to look up more about Track Agile. And I'm going to have to rush to the last question, which is Hung, and then we will sing ourselves out of here. Hung says, don't kill me for asking this. Hung, I'm not sure I would kill you at all. Oh, thank you, Faye. We're getting more donations today. Hung says, I don't believe it, but it's a thought exercise. What if you're the group that is failing to adapt to the changing needs of tech companies like pro photographers versus Instagram? I think what he's saying here is, we're seeing a lot of backlash on Instagram right now from pro photographers and groups that have certain needs, and Instagram was originally for the serious photographer, and now Instagram is just trying to be Snapchat or whatever. So what if you're in the group that is failing to adapt to the changing needs of tech companies?
What are you saying? Like, are you working for somebody that isn't listening to the needs of the audience?
Hung, are you saying you're in the audience, like you're the pro photographer, or are you saying you work at Instagram? I'm not sure of the angle on this one.
Yeah.
And thanks again to Jamie and Faye for the kind super stickers here on YouTube. They have dropped into the tip jar. See? Hung says, no, I wrote that poorly. Okay, well, there you go. We'll never know. We're running out of time. So while Hung rephrases that, Nick, give us some of your parting words and where everybody can find you and follow you.
Probably LinkedIn for the moment. After a little spat with a troll a few months ago, I've just kind of backed off of that place. I'm still there, piping up every now and then to cause trouble or, try to keep the ship going in the right direction. Same that Debbie, Darren, and all the rest of us are doing. I'm not very responsive, and right now work is crazy, as you can probably infer from all the stuff I've been talking about. It's good but crazy, and it's making me a better practitioner, and it's super duper difficult. But that means I don't have a lot of time for LinkedIn and responding. If it is really desperately urgent and you absolutely need me, please do, and I will do absolutely best endeavors to get back to you. Otherwise, you can be sure I'll be here with Debbie once a month doing our thing. So that's where you can find me. Good luck, and stay safe out there.
Yes, for sure. And Hung says he's going to raise this in our Delta CX Slack community instead of here. Give him some time to rephrase it. So if you would like to be part of the Slack and or the Discord community, they are totally free. We absolutely welcome you to come and browse all of the channels and post stuff in their relevant channels. The Discord is just getting started. We have about 140 or 120 people there, so it's kind of new. Slack has almost 2,000, but we only usually have about 150 active people at any given moment. So come on and join them. You can find the links at deltacx.com/links, and we welcome everybody to be part of the community and helping each other. So Nick, thanks as always for a great 12-inch dance remix version of the extra long office hours. And I guess we'll see you in a month, hopefully with the Darren. But if not, we'll have you, and that will always be a good thing. So I will see everybody tomorrow. We've got Abby Covert coming on talking about her new book and about information architecture and diagrams. So won't you please join us? Thanks, and be safe, everybody. Bye. Customer centricity as business intelligence. Visit deltacx.com to learn why we are